Oh, hello, and welcome to my talk today. I want to thank Rivers Edge West for hosting this conference and letting me speak today about how to use the National River Recreation Database to plan and execute research and management objectives. So going beyond the research aspect, going beyond the recreational aspect and including research and monitoring trips as one of the things that we can do using this database. A little bit about me. My name is James Major. I'm the National Rivers Project Coordinator for the River Management Society. I'm excited to join this conference for the second time. First time I went as a grad student when it was held down in Phoenix at the Botanical Gardens. And I thought it was such a great conference, so I'm excited to be able to present it today. A little bit about RMS, if you're unfamiliar. Our mission is to support professionals who study, protect, and manage North America's rivers. We have over 400 members in 7 chapters across the United States and some in Canada. They're dedicated to river management. And some of these members include federal, state, local agency employees, educators, researchers, nonprofit river stewardship and water trail organizations, individuals, and students through our River Studies and Leadership program at various colleges around the U.S. RMS has several different projects that we work on. We do river trainings for river managers dealing with a wide variety of issues, such as wild and scenic management, CRNP, Section 7 trainings, things like that. My side is on the National River Recreation Database, which is GIS based. It's a geospatial portfolio of information on wild and scenic rivers, water trails, whitewater rivers, access points, and campgrounds within both the United States and in Canada, especially in rivers that are near the border, where you still need to have some access points and campgrounds, things like of that nature. So the NRRD is a good starting point for planning a trip. It's not where you go to comprehensively planning a trip, and I'll show you a little bit more about that when I do a little scenario about how you might use it in real life to plan a research trip. But it's a great place to start and has the resources you need to get you to the endpoint, to get you in the water. So our original project goals were to offer a high-level view of rivers across the nation using attributes important and familiar to fans of rivers and outdoor recreation, and how to direct visitors to a definitive detailed resource for experience to help plan their visit. And I think this can go beyond recreation and easily into the research and academia, as well as monitoring and restoration activities. Because as my background is in as a research assistant as an undergraduate in Oregon for fluvial geomorphologists studying gravel bar and doing structure for motion modeling using photography with drones and camera on a pole and things like that. We had to plan multiple river trips to do that on the Rogue River and Sandy. And it can be a lot of work. So I'm hoping that this resource can help folks with some of the hurdles that can be in the way of a successful trip plan. So here, this is also showing at the top a little bit of our attribute table for our floatable reaches, river access sites, and campgrounds. This shows just some of the data that we have in the NRRD. For instance, the floatable reaches here shows maybe 10 different categories or 10 different attributes, but the entire thing holds 26 different columns of data about the river that I'm happy to share with anyone that needs information about rivers. So we have almost 2,000 floatable reaches that we have in the United States and Canada that are cataloged, along with 14,500 river access points and over 700 campgrounds. So we don't just find the data and stick it in to our attribute table and then let it go live just whenever I find it on the internet. What we do is search for information and then send it off to be vetted by local partners. For instance, currently we're working on wild and scenic BLM rivers that are managed by the BLM. In fact, adding over 600 miles of wild and scenic rivers to the database just this year already. And so currently working on Oregon is the next state for BLM managed wild and scenic rivers. And what we'll do is collect all the data that we can from various sources on the internet, and then send that over to the state lead BLM, who will then disseminate that to regional offices where people on the ground have local knowledge of these rivers. They vet that information and send it back to us, back up through the chain of command. And then when I get it, then I add it to the database. So that way we keep it as authoritative as possible, up to date as possible as we check in with our partners as frequently as possible with such a large database. And that way you can feel pretty confident about what you're trying, about planning your trip. So we like to thank our major partners in this endeavor. And these are just some of the large ones. We have over 50 other partners, smaller partners, friends groups, you name it, other small organizations, state groups. So we're happy to have their support, cooperation. To get this data out to the public, we have nationalriversproject.com, which is our website and portal to all the information, or most of the information that we store in the database. And so I thought it would be good at this time to do a little tutorial to go through a scenario. So I'm going to switch which one we are showing and go to our website over here. So this is our home page where you can see we've got our wild and scenic rivers and water trails and whitewater rivers. And you can find a featured river that's near you if you're not looking for a specific river at a specific time. But we're going to say that we're a grad student looking to do research on how cottonwood trees planted 20 years ago within elk exclosures are faring in the wild and scenic section of the Rio Chama between El Vado Dam and the Sibique Reservoir. There are some access points that you could maybe hike down to the river in certain places, but that's not the most efficient way to do it. This study is most efficiently conducted by boat, putting in below the dam and floating down to the takeout. And this is pretty, I think, pretty common, at least in my experiences, of a way to get to remote areas to do some studies. You could go directly to the river that you're looking for. We're going to start off at a macro level and look at our entire map minus Alaska. You can see we've got those added rivers up there. You can see that a lot of our rivers and water trails are heavily focused along the East Coast and the Midwest. We've been doing a lot of work with partners over there and have finally started to really work with the partners in the West. Like I said, we're adding the BLM Wild and Scenic Rivers currently is the project, followed by the BLM non-wild and scenic. So stay tuned in the West, and there'll be a lot more opportunity in the upcoming several months when these become online. We can see over to our right, we've got filters where we can filter our rivers by how difficult they are, whether they're wild and scenic, whitewater rivers, water trails, and then other amenities like if there's fishing or if you need camping or a boat ramp, near. where you're trying to do your research. Or so for us, we're going to go to the Rio Chama, and you see it predictively comes up as a search. So we'll click on the Rio Chama and it will click us over, and we will, for the purposes of this, unselect it, so take it out of the search bar. So we can see that this is a wild and scenic river and also has whitewater. So we need to know more about this river so we can figure out who we need to bring along on our research trip. If I'm studying trees but I've never rowed a boat, I'm going to need to find someone that can row a boat if there's whitewater of sufficient difficulty. So let's check it out and see what it says. All right, so we got two sections here. And this is a class 2, class 3, so intermediate. So I need to get someone that's rowed a boat before for our research trip. But the good news is for this section, I don't need a permit, which we know can be difficult to obtain, and the timing for a permit is important for our study, perhaps. So this is managed by the U.S. Forest Service. We can also see where the management is. Then we can see where our access points are. So we want to do the entire river stretch between El Vado and the Cibecue Reservoir, or at least the nearest takeout to that location, because we have various sites all along the river where they planted cottonwood trees a couple of decades ago that we need to check on. So we check out put in, we want the top, and as we can see, it's a carry-in at the El Vado Ranch. It's actually right next to the river, easy carry-in, and some of the carry-in locations for our sites may even be primitive ramps where you could back a trailer in if you're daring, but if it's not a developed ramp, we keep it as carry-in so we don't get your hopes up. It does cost money to put in there. There are restrooms, which is nice, and you can park overnight. So we know we've got a place there. And we know we want to probably take out at the lower end. And we see that it is a boat ramp, so that'll be nice. We'll be able to just back it in and pack it on to the ramp, to the trailer. Parking is day use, so that's something we need to keep in mind for later to make sure that we can leave a shuttle vehicle there. There's no fee, that's nice, and they do have restrooms, which is always nice at the end of the trip. So in the middle, if we do decide, it's also day use, also carry in. So we're probably just going to go down to the ramp and contact the Forest Service to see about overnight parking. So now we need to look at the stretches themselves, see what we're dealing with. We've already looked at this one. We know we've got intermediate class 2. So let's look at the top. All right, so it's a class 1 and 2. So that's another thing you can take into consideration. If you don't have a more experienced boatman, you could take out at that first location and not get the class 2-3 rapids in the segment below. So that might be a consideration. Another big thing that we find out early on is that we need a permit. So now we need to know what office we're going to go through to get that permit. And hopefully we can get a special use permit, something like an admin permit, so we don't have to wait on a lottery. But it's something good to know at the beginning of the trip planning and research trip before we find out that we're not going to be able to do it this year, so we don't get a permit. And if we do get a permit, it's not at the right time for what we're looking at. So we need to look at more details so we can figure out what's going on. All right, so we can see our segment there. It gives a little bit about the landscape. As a river becomes a featured river, we like to add more detail. So quite a bit of these different segments have much more information about that particular river. But we can see that it's multi-day, so we need to make plans for several days of camping if we do get the permit. We can't have more than 16 people, so we can only have a small research group, which typically I wouldn't think would be a problem. But we can also see that now it's the Taos field office is who we need to get in contact with. So that from there, You'll be able to click on our partner information and go, and then you'll be able to see what you can do about the permit. And so we also need to see a little bit more about the next section. So there's only a day float here, so we only add one more day to our trip. And then we can also get a hold of the Forest Service to see about the parking situation. And so we're well on our way to planning our trip. So that's a good thing. Let's go back to our here, and I'll wrap it up with what I want to show a little bit about with the National River Recreation Database. And I'd like to field any questions anybody might have. Thank you.